Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. It all depends on the time zone from where you are watching The Leader. Karibuni sana, welcome. Courtesy of the Evangelical Alliance of Kenya on Hope TV and the social media platforms. The countdown to the elections in Kenya is on. For some, that's taken forever. For others, they can hardly wait. But for us here, we're here to discuss, unpack, and give you an informed perspective on what your role should be. And today's topic is one that will be of interest to you because it's all about manifestos, it's all about campaigns, it's all about debates. How should Kenyans decide come 9th August 2022, which is barely 12 and a half days away? And to help us in this discussion, we have none other than Ms. Joy Wandabwa from Prokmura. Karibu sana.
Thank you very much, Edmund.
Now, Joy, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
What does Prokmura stand for? And what is it that you do at Prokmura?
Okay. Prokmura stands for Program for Christian-Muslim Relations in Africa. We are a Pan-African Christian continental organization working to build peace and peaceful coexistence in Africa. And we do this in several African countries, in East Africa region, West Africa region, Central Africa, and other countries which are clamoring for the issue of peace. So our objective is to build the capacity of churches around Africa to understand Christian-Muslim relations, and more especially because Christians and Muslims are the two dominant religions in Africa. And so for us, it is important that they are at peace with one another. So Prokmura basically does that, but we have a lot of programs that promote peace and peaceful coexistence. And among that is the current situation in Kenya, which means if there's no peace, there's no development. And we look at it from not only a Kenyan point of view in terms of national, but in terms of regional and continental. So the issue of peace is fundamental, and elections in Africa are one of the things that have caused unrest around Africa.
It's interesting when you speak and you mention peace, because to some, peace is the absence of war.
Exactly.
Should it be so? Or what are the telltale signs that we may not be fighting per se, but we're not peaceful?
Yeah. Very well said. Peace does not mean that we are, going into war and there's, guns flying around. Peace means a situation of rest. If you're hungry, you may not be peaceful.
They say if you're hungry, you are likely to be angry also.
And so you become unpeaceful. You have unrest around you. Yeah. So peace affects many things around us. And it's important that we understand what it means to be peaceful, what it means to be unpeaceful, and what we would like. Because we all want a restful society, a peaceful society in which we can, make our ends meet. Yeah.
Now let's get to where we are as a country in Kenya here. Politics is about to get to fever pitch. This is the last stretch, as they say.
Yeah.
Now when you have competing sides all advancing their rationale why it should be them, not the other. How should they view each other? Are they competitors? Are they opponents? Are they enemies? Because the vitriol, the language, the positioning seems like we are going to implode as a country.
Yeah. I think we need to be, and what is happening in the country is that everybody is trying to show their best. And so there's a situation of a lot of competition. But the question then becomes, what are we competing for? Are we competing for the right things or for the wrong things? In Prokmura, sometimes we call it, we have what we call positive solidarity and negative solidarity. So sometimes, as leaders, we try to influence, the people around us, the society, the community, by trying to showcase that, we are the best. We are the ones who can be able to do so much. But the question is, it is not about the leaders. It is not about the manifestos. It is about the well-being of Kenyans. So how do we go about it? And how do we even rate them? How do we score them? How do we know who is the best? Who is actually looking out for us? So it's a competitive situation. It is an environment, and it is normal. And it is normal that people tend to surround themselves around a common objective, which in this case is elections, and then they try to see how best can they convince society that they are the best. So what they are doing is actually democratic, but then the question is, what are they seeking to deliver?
And I like that, because then let's look at Kenya. When we as a country know where we are going, then indeed we have a shared vision. And this is where those who are, let me use the metaphor of a matatu.
Yeah.
If we know as a country we're going from point A to point B, then those who are aspiring for office are really fronting themselves as the drivers of the vehicle that is taking us where we are going.
Yes.
Less them telling us where we should go if they don't know where we are going as a country. Let me unpack it a bit. And here I'd like to speak to Kenya Vision 2030.
Sure.
Do we know as a country what Vision 2030 is? Do we have that shared vision as a country? To what extent can we then interrogate the manifestos that are fronted and packaged and being told, mine is better than the other, if it doesn't plug into where we're going as a country? Because you can't come up and take us nowhere or somewhere which is outside where we should be going, because then we'll be all over nowhere.
Yeah. I think, just as you have said, if I board a matatu, I must be having some sense of direction. And Kenya as a country, as you've said, is directed by, among others, Vision 2030. And Vision 2030 was very clear on where we want to be as a country. And actually, when Vision 2030 was packaged several years ago, it seemed so far away. It seemed so far away, but now we are in 2022.
It's barely 8 years away.
It's barely 8 years away.
Yes.
So the question then becomes, what have we done for the last 10 years, for the last 20 years or more? And are Kenyans even aware about what this vision is? Because sometimes we look at it from a very different point of view. We hear about Vision 2030, but we cannot unpackage. And Vision 2030 also taps or plugs into the Sustainable Development Goals, which are being also implemented. So the question then becomes, when we look at these manifestos, when we look at these debates, are they plugging into that vision? Are our leaders, driving, like you're saying, the matatu into the right direction, or have we veered off course? And how do Kenyans then hold them to accountability and say, look here, we intended to go here. If I boarded a matatu and I was going to Muranga and I'm somewhere at Kenol and the matatu is stuck, what can I do as a Kenyan? How do I engage with the driver? In this case, maybe the politician or government or other institutions to help me get to Muranga. I have a right to get to Muranga, but how do I get to Muranga? Do I have the right driver? We have been in matatus where you have seen people saying, slow down. You're driving with speed.
Yes.
You're risking our lives. How do you put all of us here and you're going to, kill us or something like that. But are Kenyans doing that? And our leaders, are they looking out for these people in that matatu for their safety to get to their destination?
Now, manifestos, what are they? Because on the face of it, when I speaking and asking for a friend and I listen to all these different manifestos, we're being promised heaven on earth. In fact, you begin wondering whether we need heaven after this, because Kenya will be the land to be.
I think a manifesto, is a document, which the leader says, this is what I'm going to do. It is a promise. It is barely a promise. And we have seen manifestos, election in, election out. And they are very flowery. They are full of promises. But are these promises delivered? We have been told about work plans. We have been told about, I think we have now 4 manifestos from the 4 main political parties. But then, how do we interrogate these manifestos? How do we relate with them? And unfortunately, I think a very small population of our Kenyan society even understands the manifestos that are put across us. If we would go back to 2017, I think maybe we picked 2 or 3 things from those manifestos. But then the manifesto is such a huge document, and we don't see it. We don't feel it. For me, I think it is a tool of trade during elections, but never really a tool of trade post-elections.
That's right, yes. Because then you find that, and everybody has. I mean, you'll have political party, you'll have the coalitions, then they harmonize the so-called manifestos, then you have individuals in terms of the aspirants with their own manifestos. And then you'll have, there's a whole cocktail of so-called manifesto, left, right, and the Kenyans get confused.
Confused, actually, that's the word.
Maybe that's the intention, that you can't consume what you can't understand.
I think the question I would also just like to pose to Kenyans is, how many of us even vote because of those manifestos? How many of us
vote because
are convinced? How many of us have sat down and interrogated the 4 manifestos and felt like, okay, without all the politics around it, without favoring, I am this tribe and I'm going to vote this tribe, I am this. You understand? How do I relate? Do I relate, for example, with the manifesto of Kenya Kwanza, or is it Azimio, or Roots Party, or what? How do I relate with it? So that by the time I am going to vote, I have carefully read through. And time is not lost. 11 days to the elections, we can still interrogate those manifestos and see what is best for us.
That is the ideal. But truth be told, by now, in fact, there are those who, they couldn't care about manifestos.
Exactly.
I have decided I will vote for joy, come rain, come sun, come, irrespective, just because. And that is the folly of our system.
And unfortunately, we are also contributing as Kenyans, as voters, to that situation which we are trying to fight. If you're going to vote for joy, can you vote because joy is capable? Can you vote because joy is a leader of integrity? Can you vote because I have a track record to show that I am capable of advocating, delivering a number of things? I think that is where we are as Kenya. And you talk about manifestos. Most of the leaders today, some of them are coming back. Some of them are going there for the first time. But starting with those ones who are even coming back, my member of parliament, have they delivered? Because if I come from that society, then I need to see that that society has progressed. you as a Kenyan, you are also accountable.
You have a role to play.
You have a role to play.
A spectator.
You cannot say that, our MP does this and they don't do this, and our MCA does this and they don't do this. How have you held them accountable?
What were you doing?
What were you doing? You can't wait for 5 years to go back to the ballot and put either the same person in place, whether they have delivered or not. Does that matter to you? Does it speak to you? That's where the change must come from. That's where you should interrogate the manifestos, so that they are not flowery. Hold them accountable. I see in other countries, people hold their leaders accountable. They interrogate them, and they look at their track record. And if I'm coming for the first time, Joy works for Program for Christian-Muslim Relations. What has been her track record in Prokmura or in the community where I live? Because many times we are like, okay, I don't belong. We look at it from the very individual and selfish point of view. But the truth is that we also, as Kenyan voters, have a role. In fact, the buck stops with us. The buck stops with Kenyans. So what can we do in the next 11 days or so? What kind of leaders do we want to put into our offices so that we don't cry foul? Elections is one day. Governance or economic development and change is a marathon. What the manifestos are saying today, we are going to pay school fees, we are going to give free, I don't know, what and all that, it may not be so. Where is the money going to come from to do all these things? So can Kenyans look at it? You cannot say tomorrow, the price of flour is not going to go down tomorrow or on 10th of August just because you voted being convinced. It's a process. Have our leaders told us about these processes that affect our day-to-day? Or they're making promises. In the next 100 days, we are going to do this, we are going to do that, we are going to do this. Is it achievable? That's the question that Kenyans should be asking. But more importantly, they need to work hard on their own, because manna is not going to drop from heaven. It's not going to drop from our leaders. It is going to come from us. So manifestos for me, promises, very flowery promises, but we need to be careful.
Indeed, what you've just brought out in the last couple of minutes that is profound is that, one, as a country, we have a direction. Do we know where we're going? Do we understand? Do we appreciate where we're going? Two is that we must engage. We must be involved.
Correct. That's very
We have a responsibility, really more on us than anybody else. But again, fundamentally, election day is a milestone. It's not an end in itself.
Not at all. Yeah.
Because we have to see it within a timeline of the before, the during, and after. And what is our role? What's my responsibility? There are those who will say, come 9th, I will not vote.
Yeah.
I'm not going to decide.
Yeah.
In fact, can I suggest that the so-called undecided voters in all these polls, they've made a decision.
Very true.
And that decision is not to decide. So there's nothing of...
You're undecided.
You're undecided.
You're either decided or undecided, but you fall in a category.
You fall in a category.
Yeah.
Now, then comes the whole subject of campaigns. Because campaigns is all about, there is the ideal, perfect, nice, rational campaigning, but there's a lot of muddying the waters, embarrassing the other, unleashing skeletons by, the different formations. And I wish they would default to scripture.
Yeah, that's true.
He who has no sin, let him be the first to cast a stone. So as much as I'm saying, Joy here did, Joy, that's okay.
Yeah.
But what about me? But I'm not saying we then get into a collusion of the crafty.
Yeah.
Since we all have skeletons, then we agree we don't unleash. I put it to us that Kenya is in a season of revelation.
Yeah.
We will know what you kept, what you thought you were hiding, what you didn't want us to know. So, campaigns. How should we engage in campaigns? What are we doing wrong? What should we do right? And from your experience, how does that contribute to interfaith relationship, ethnic relationship, inter-race relationship, inter-community relationship, even within the same? Speak to campaigns.
The question of campaigns is, well, I think it's a very complex situation. And you'll find that it actually takes a lot of our time. And some of the leaders campaign right from the next day they are sworn into office.
They never stop campaigning.
They never stop campaigning. But at the end of the day, it cannot be about campaigns all the time. It is a season, and I think we need to learn from it. There are countries who go into campaigning, and the sooner the elections is finished, we have crossed that line, and now we move into development. But Kenya has historically, been always in a campaigning mode. In fact, I think we attract one of the most engaging campaigns. And as you've said, they really become murky. It becomes, a platform of, name calling and all that. But then, if we go back to interfaith relations, and both, as I work for a program for Christian-Muslim relations, both from the Christian point of view and the Muslim point of view, we promote peace because we say Jesus is the Prince of Peace. And in Islam, it's always Assalamu alaikum, which means peace be with you. So I wish that our campaigns would create a situation of peace, a situation of, brotherhood, a situation of sisterhood, so that, yes, you might be the best, but then you don't have to call me names just because you are good at what we do. And Bible says we have all fallen short of the glory. We are all sinners in one way or another. And this morning, as I was looking at the morning devotion, it said sometimes, in fact, if you look at campaigns, it's more like gossip. It is a gossip platform. And we are told in Timothy, zip it. When I know something about Edmond that is not good, a public podium is not a place to go and, create all the things about Edmond. The right thing these leaders should do, because they need to know that they have youth, they have children in their country who are looking up to them. I would call Edmond aside and say, I don't like the way you do these things. Can we do this thing in a peaceful way? We all need to campaign. We all need to sell our, our manifestos. We all need to sell ourselves. But can we do it in the right way? But during the campaign period, the youth are the ones who are even more vulnerable. And they're looking at it from a very realistic point of view. If you like, it is our time to also, get a bit from these campaigns. Because I am going to be reimbursed. I am going to get something small. I have been sleeping hungry. And that is why you find that when you have the politicians moving across the country, you'll find a lot of youth and people flocking there. Not just because they want to listen to what these people are saying.
What it is they can get from.
What is it that I can get? But you're forgetting that these people have been amassing your wealth, which was supposed to be developing the country, and now they have stored it to come and give it to you for a period of 3 months. So the campaigns, and I like that there are few people who don't even get involved. But the question is, why don't they get involved? And those who are getting involved and moving from town to town, street to street, how do they benefit? It's not that they want to be there. It is because of the economic situation that they are in that they are rallying and moving behind those politicians. If they had an option, I think they wouldn't. If they had an option. But the option is accountability from our leaders. Accountability. And that is what this election should be about. How we can hold those manifestos, how we can hold those leaders into accountability. Because of not even me today, but the future of our children. So it cannot be defined by an electioneering period. There is more that goes to it, especially when you say we have Vision 2030. Can we as Kenyans even just, and today we have the internet. Can we go and Google? Can we download and try to understand what is this? Where are we going as a country? We see some development and we say, okay, at least we are somewhere. But then, have we gotten the best of it? Or we are not yet there? So we need to interrogate. We need to engage. All the manifestos, this campaigning, because if you look at the campaigning, I have not seen a podium where they now also invite, non-politicians to come and ask them, what have you been doing? Those platforms never involve that. Yeah. It's always that so-and-so will do this, so-and-so did not do this, so-and-so did not do this, and all these kind of things. But when we are seated there in the crowd, do we get a chance to?
And I think, interesting you've said that, because I think in political rallies, mass, it's all about hype.
Exactly.
Momentary hype, take it on a high, but then they'll argue and tell you, no. We'll arrange the town halls where you can interrogate and you'll ask us questions.
Mm-hmm. How many town halls have been arranged?
And to what extent are those participants of town halls empowered with enough information to interrogate these leaders availing themselves for the town halls? It is good, it's in the right direction, but I guess it's progressive, we're evolving.
And I think maybe we have grown a bit, or we have matured a bit in terms of maybe public accountability and public participation, but not yet there. Because as you say, if they're in the town halls, if I go to, some county, will I be able to see what this county committed to do and what it has done for the last 5 years, so that then I interrogate based on factual information. But many times you will find that either we can't access those documents, or we also do not have the interest of checking into those documents. So that also, at some point we need to be responsible as Kenyans, and we also need to put responsible leaders into office. Yeah.
And when you look at the nature of campaigns, like you say, the youth, vulnerable, misused, violence, and then dishing out handouts, so that then we get conditioned into at least every 5 years I have opportunity to get something from Joy, and then you disappear. I'm actually doing myself a lot of injustice. So can we hold ourselves to account first? How should we engage? What are we doing wrong?
And how do we stop that culture of handouts? How do we get rid of that culture? Procmora is currently running a campaign in Nairobi, in Kibra, and Mathare and other areas on peaceful elections. And youth are the target. And our campaign is dubbed China Money Campaign, CHAI. And so we're saying, let's sit together and have a conversation over a cup of tea and look beyond elections. After elections, what is going to happen? But many times, like you're saying, the youth are pulled into, are used. Yesterday, we were actually in a conference organized by EAK and NACADA, and the concern was that there's a lot of drug and alcohol abuse. And during these campaigns, you will see that most of these youth, they are intoxicated with alcohol, with the drugs, and that's how they move from one rally to another. And so when Procmora went with some tea, they were like, you know, because we're used to handouts, you know. And we are saying we don't want to give handouts. We want to discuss. We want to have a conversation. We want you to reflect what happened in 2017, what happened in 2013 after the violence. And we want you to say now, we are not going to be led into violence just because of elections. We can sit together and have a conversation. And we don't need to be bribed and given handouts so that we are able to vote. And I think as a church, as faith-based organizations, even as institutions, private sector and all that, we need to support these youth who are vulnerable so that we can, in one way, even if we cannot stop it completely, but we can prevent it. We can prevent them. We can protect them from being, you know, politicized. Sometimes we call it politicization of religion and religionization of politics. That always also comes into play. You see politicians going into the church, you know, politicizing religion, and religious leaders also being drawn into politics. So the environment is very toxic. It needs a lot of engagement. It needs a lot of education. There are so many things which these leaders and in their manifestos are not talking about. They're not talking about. We need to find the root cause of why unga is expensive. Unga can even be 200 shillings. But if I have the economic ability to buy that unga at 200 shillings, I will not feel, you know, that my rights are being infringed because the environment has been provided for me to be able to afford that unga. So now Kenyans, ask yourself, are we in the right environment to be able to purchase a packet of unga either at 200 shillings or 100 shillings? It is not about, you know, campaigns and using the wrong language that this has happened. I mean, situations are unpredictable. COVID-19 came 2 years ago. Whoever thought about COVID-19? It has brought all of us down. And now we are starting to rebuild. The war in Ukraine, you know, in one way or another, whether we like it or not, there's a global environment. And we say the world has become a global village. So we cannot look at it from a very individualistic point of view. We need to be holistic, you know, and we need to hold these people and say, I do not want, even if I am clamoring that unga should come down, I need to be capacitated to afford that packet of unga.
Now, I put it to you that the unequalness in society is what makes us extremely vulnerable as a people.
Yeah.
The gap between those who have, those who don't.
Yeah.
I mean, we say we don't have enough money, but step into any average road in the country, you'll keep seeing newer cars every other day, and you wonder, is it me alone who is broke?
And the traffic jams are growing every day. The roads are being expanded, but we are still occupying those roads. And so the unequal distribution of resources, of opportunities, is part of the problem in this country.
And that's a time bomb, especially in a country where more than 80%, what's a percentage of those who are youth? At least 3/4, 2/3.
Exactly.
But they don't remain youth forever.
No,
They're also
they are growing.
and transitioning with expectations.
Yeah.
That's a time bomb waiting to happen.
Yeah, yeah. So if I interrogate those manifestos, and you have brought a very valid point in terms of inequalities in our society. What is being done about it? Because if you talk about the Sustainable Development Goals, it has all these on them. It talks about gender equality, it talks about youth and development, it talks about education, it talks about all that. And all this is geared towards uplifting society so that there is a level playing ground. But in our case, and again, in terms of accountability, you will find that the rich continue to becoming richer and richer, and the poor continue to become poor. So if you look at the leaders today, they have not put, or they're not, in fact, that is the last thing they want to be held accountable for. Mm-hmm. And that should tell Kenyans something. That should tell Kenyans, I may be comfortable with where I am, but certainly everybody wants growth. Mm-hmm. Everybody wants growth, especially economic growth, economic empowerment. Those are some of the things that, I think these manifestos would be looking at. We should not be looking at, okay, there's the issue of paying tax. There are countries around the world, for example, Denmark, who pay 50% of tax. Mm-hmm. But they see where the taxes are going. They have good...
Systems work.
The systems work.
Yes.
Things are happening. So how do we make our systems work here? Even if we are complaining about the tax issue, are the systems working?
But you see now, this is where the campaigning and the politics comes to condition us that because you've elected me, yeah, or you voted for me who didn't go through, mm-hmm, then development is not coming yet. Mm-hmm. As a Kenyan, as a taxpayer,
yeah, exactly,
you have a right to receive the services. It is not a favor.
You are paying for it.
You've paid for it,
yes,
whether or not you voted for that person.
And whether you work, whether you're in the informal sector, wherever you are, if you go and buy bread in the supermarket, you are paying tax. You're paying tax. So you have a right to question. You have a right to interrogate. You have a right to say no. And 9th of August is your time. Because if we put leaders in office who cannot be held accountable, then we need not complain. Unfortunately, we need not complain. So the buck stops with you. The buck stops with you as a Kenyan. Everybody is paying tax in this country. And government has no money. Mm-hmm. Government is using money from Kenyans. Kenyans are the ones who pay the revenues.
It's our money.
It is our money. Mm-hmm. So if the money is not being used in the best way, we have a right to question.
Now, has the middle class failed us? What I mean here is that those of us who are privileged to be in the middle class,
yeah,
I put it to us that we're the ones failing because we'll build bigger walls, we will we become elastic, yeah, in how we accommodate, yeah, because we believe that we are cushioned, mm-hmm, so we become, we don't participate effectively. Mm-hmm. We look at it like it is somebody else's business in matters politics, mm-hmm, and yet we're actually becoming poorer. Has the middle class failed? If so, how? If not, unpack it.
I tend to feel and agree that the middle class has not given its best. We have become complacent. We are comfortable in our homes, in our cars, and we are actually encouraging these inequalities, mm-hmm, if you like, because we have this issue of being very individualistic. we mind our own business, and we don't look out for one another. You see, if I'm in the middle class or I'm at the lower part of the society and somebody else is at the top, if we had a culture of looking out for one another, we would pull those ones who are down up with us, and the ones who are up here would pull all of us, so that, we would try to reduce that gap. But the middle class, in fact, many times, if you talk about the political rallies, you will not find a big chunk of the middle class
you won't
there.
See them.
They're not there.
They will wait to interrogate on Twitter.
In fact, when people in Kibra, they will be on Twitter and social media and doing their thing, and people in Kibra or Madare are, clamoring for something. They're like,
yes.
We will be the ones saying, what are they complaining about? We will be the ones condemning them. Saying that they need not to, they're being violent. But I cannot put, a big gate around my house or a wall and hope that this person on the other side
doesn't jump
over and come and steal from me. So my responsibility is, how do I stop them from doing that? I have seen politicians in some of the places we come from, and I am always asking myself, these people, they are widely traveled, they are knowledgeable, they are so skilled, they see what happens out there. As leaders, why can't they even just emulate what is happening there? We are talking about, for example, the issue of maize. Now, where does the maize come from in Kenya? The maize comes from the fruit basket of Kenya, Trans Nzoia, Bungoma, and all that.
Yes.
And I ask our leaders and I challenge, because I happen to come from there. But the question is, how many milling factories do we have there? That's about empowerment.
Exactly.
That is about empowerment. How many milling factories have been put in Trans Nzoia, in Bungoma, in Kakamega, to be able to empower the people around there so they don't have to come and live in poverty in Nairobi, and they can work right from their farms. They can be, have economic empowerment. They can take their children to school from the staple food that they grow. Our leaders in Western have not been able to deliver that,
no,
unfortunately. And we are still voting them in office.
Season in, season out.
Season in, season out. Why do we do that? Why do we do that? Because that's the only way we can break ourselves from this issue of inequality. Because if I have empowerment, I will feel more encouraged. Perhaps I harvested 5 bags of maize. I saw the value of maize. Next year, I will be more encouraged to grow 10 because of the benefits that I'm reaping. But we, the middle class, are coming from Nairobi. They don't grow the maize. They go there.
Become brokers.
They become brokers. You see how we are supporting the system? So it is kind of like a man-eat-man society. Each man for himself and God for us all. We need to look at that.
Yeah.
We really need to look into that.
Now let's get into the interesting subject of debates.
Yes.
The culture of debates started some time back in the last elections or thereabout, but yes, we've got the presidential debates, gubernatorial debates, you've got, even at MCA debates, you now have, are they good? Do the people, there are those who will say, no, I've made up my mind, I don't even need to watch. But is that really the purpose of the debate for interrogate, as opposed to what should debates bring out in terms of the thinking, in terms of the unpacking, in terms of interrogation? Less for those who already decided, which is fine, it's their democratic rights, possibly more to those who are undecided to realize that actually, apart from making the decision, not make a decision, that's the direction I would want to go. What's your comment on debates?
I think I would go where you started from when you said it depends on the purpose of that debate. What is the objective? Because I think sometimes some of us are not really into this political, trying to understand all these kind of things. But then the question then becomes, a debate, and like you said, it started some years back, but then sometimes we kind of lose a bit of focus. That's my opinion. We lose a bit of focus because if I am coming for the debate, whether gubernatorial, deputy president, I don't know, president, what do I want Kenyans to learn
from it?
Even
from those organizing, less those who are consuming.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So what is the intention of the debate? Is it just for me to come and say, okay, we are going to question you? It depends. They're very objective. You want to interrogate me, or you want to give me a platform where I am going to show my capabilities to Kenyans. So the question then becomes, like you're saying, if I'm coming there as a candidate, I'm coming to convince those ones who are not yet on board. Am I coming to sanctify myself also? Am I coming to? So it's a whole a lot of things. It's democratic. It's an engaging process. It gives us an opportunity to get to understand who these leaders are, and maybe even as they stand on those podiums and talk about so many things, maybe these Kenyans should now, note down those things and follow these politicians through when they get into office. So there are so many reasons. I would look at it from a very different point of view. You would look at it from a very different point of view. It's a democratic process. It's an open process. But can it be used in the right way? Can the objective be clear? Because like right now, we just hear, okay, there's a presidential debate. Maybe also some civic education would help the common Kenyan to understand the rationale.
That's right.
Because are you doing the debates for the middle class?
To whom are you speaking? And
whom are you speaking to?
Because at times you might find that the nature or context of the debate is more of an exam that you'd fail or pass.
And it does not even relate. And you're going to be scored against it.
Yes.
And some of us will just be on social media saying, okay, so-and-so did very well, so did you.
But how do you rationalize the unpacking to grade, so to speak?
Exactly.
I mean, in 2 minutes, if I ask you to unpack where you want to take us as a country, really?
Is that possible?
Then I complain and say, you didn't show us how.
Yeah.
If I'm able to tell you where we're going and show you how in less than 2 minutes, then we're going nowhere, because that's where I'm going to take you.
It's a tough thing. It's a tough process. It is.
But there it is. At least it helps in presenting those who've offered themselves and get a sense of what the views are, where they want to take us, and how we should engage with them. How then do we hold our leaders accountable after? Do we know the right of recall, for example? So that if you're not performing and yet we got you in through the democratic elective process, there are those who feel that you want to impeach the system, give them 5 years, but they're not delivering. If we can see you're not delivering in 2 years, why do we tolerate you for 5?
Yeah, the question then becomes, are those processes there? Like, for example, when you talk about impeachment, because if I have ascended into office or taken over office, whether it is a political office or public or private sector, ideally, if I am an employer and I have an employee who is questionable, not performing,
you have to find a way of letting them go.
Yes.
And others who can deliver, then come on.
Yes.
Nature abhors vacuum. There will always be people
exactly.
taken forward.
How many times do we do that? Because if I was running my own organization, I would surely want to let you go. And these leaders need to understand that they would be let go, depending on what the Constitution of Kenya has put in place for us. But I wouldn't even want to wait. Before 9th of August, I want to tell Kenyans that take your leaders through an appraisal process.
That's right, yes.
Take your leaders through an appraisal process. You know, interrogate them, look at them, and if you feel that they have not performed, please don't go with the euphoria. Don't go with the masses. Don't put these people into offices. Say no. After all, a vote is my private thing. When I go to the ballot, I tick alone. I don't ask Edmund, you know, it's not like, what are you ticking and who are you? Sometimes even the person in the next booth, you don't know who they are.
No.
You understand? So you need to be responsible. So interrogate them. Now is your chance. If Kenyans were to start, you know, standing out and saying no to bad leadership, by just saying, go home, you did not perform for the last 5 years. I want to tell you that the leaders who come in after 9th of August, they will be scared because they will know so-and-so was sent home. So perhaps that will even make them, even if they are not to perform 100%, but they will start to have some, you know, some accountability in them. But as long as we just keep passing them,
the wave.
You know, we go with the wave. We say, okay, if I am Azimio or I am UDA, I am just going to go there and tick, tick, tick. I don't know who my MCA is. I don't know who my MP is. In fact, for me, the MCAs and the MPs should be the ones who should be more vocal. They should be the ones who are selling their, you know, their agendas more, because they are the ones we live on a day-to-day. We rarely get to the governors and the president. But for the MCA,
you can get them.
Their fate is in your hands. So you need to hold them accountable.
Now, let me put it to you. I'm going to ask you a very interesting direct question here. Do you believe in six-piece voting? What are the pros and cons? Pros and cons of it, because there are those, you may end up getting the right people or miss the right people because they're in the wrong party, or you get the wrong people in because they're in the right party that is popular, that is moving with waves and almost demigod idol worship, where you have sycophants across board, and sycophants cuts, including academic sycophants, professional sycophants. We see them, they're here. Truth be told.
Personally, I don't believe in six-piece voting. I believe I should vote in a leader based on their credentials, based on their integrity, based on what they have been able to do. And this cuts across even in our work when I talk to you about politicization of religion, regionalization of politics. You know, we encourage even those of our constituencies, and if you go to other countries, for example, Nigeria and all that where we work, you will find that there's always, they try to strike a balance. They will say that if the president is a Christian,
the vice
should be it should be a Muslim, because of striking the balance. Well, that is very important. But the problem should be, if I am going to vote for you as a vice president, I need to understand what you are all about. I should not vote for you because you are a Christian. If your competitor is a Muslim and they can be able to perform better, then I will vote for the Muslim. If my competitor is one tribe or the other, we should not vote for them because they are my tribe. We should vote for them because of what they are able to do. And unless Kenyans start understanding that this is the way to go, it becomes very, very difficult. We will go there, we will say Azimio, UDA, or Roots. And then, after 10th of August, we are going to be asking ourselves, not even 10th of August, 1 year, 2 years down the road, It's like, what did we do to ourselves? So if you don't want to ask yourself that question,
this is the time to make sure.
This is the time. You have 11 days. You have 11 days to make that decision and say, I want to vote for somebody who is going to change my life, or even if not my life, but the society, the environment in which I live.
So what tips would you have beyond 9th August? Practical tips for engagement at the individual level, at the family level, community level, so that then we make the right decisions.
Beyond the elections?
Beyond the elections, yes. How do we hold? What tips would you have? For example, now you brought out the different layers that you have, the MCAs, you know, you've got the members of parliament, etc., and so on. How do we engage to hold them account? What can we do? What can you and I do where I stay, practically speaking? What tips can you have? What can you share?
I think I would want to start with maybe more the middle class people. If I voted in a leader and I went and ticked you in that ballot, I need to get to know who you are. Because unfortunately, most of us, when we come to the MCA, very few people even know which MCA is going to do what. Can we try and engage? Can we try and understand maybe what was the manifesto? What was the objective of this person? You know, and you see them going, I don't even understand why after 9th of August and people have successfully gotten into office, you see them doing some home parties. It's a complete waste of resources. You know, they want to go and say, now and after the, what do you call it? The meet the people party,
yes.
That is the end of the story. How can we engage them further? How can we find out who they are? How, for example, and when this allocation of resources, for example, is happening,
get involved. Get
involved. Get to know what has been assigned to my constituency.
And look out for it.
Confirm
if it is being delivered or not, and create forums where you engage with them and letting them know that if they don't deliver,
we are watching them.
And we don't have to wait until 2027.
And then we start saying, no, we need to do it now. We need to understand those forums. We need to understand even our constitution a lot more. We need to know what does it provide for us, and how do we seek redress when we are not happy with the, an MCA. But unfortunately, again, for Kenyan society, sometimes you'll be the only one speaking.
Now, which is very interesting, because then, is it right because everybody is on that side, or it can be right even if you're standing alone? It can be very unpopular where Joe is standing up and demanding to hold that MCA to account in your ward because of insecurity, potholes, drainage, utilities.
Having worked in the interfaith world for a long time, and perhaps NGO, one of the things, one of the principles, even for Mahatma Gandhi, is, speak out against the injustices that are cast on you or society. Always be ready to speak out, even if you are the only one. Injustice
anyways.
Yes.
Injustice everywhere.
Yes. So you need to. You will not always rally people behind you. But speak up. Let you go on record to have condemned, to have spoken out. Do not become complacent. Do not become culpable. Do not become part of the system. Always try and correct that which is not right. And, one day, I think, God being our helper, he will vindicate all of us. Because all this rhetoric can only go on for some time. But it is for us to do what? To endeavor to bring that change that we are looking for. So we always need to speak out.
And what of the space? Are we seeing more empowerment, as it were, in terms of gender equality, persons living with disabilities? Are we accommodating them enough in terms of us as a people, as we're progressing? what can you expect? Should it be tokenism or otherwise? When will we say that the ground is level for competition of ideas to set in?
Well, I think as a country, when it comes to issues and matters of gender equality and all that, we are unfortunately not yet there. Still, there's so much that needs to be done, and there's so much that that can be done. You know, we talk about empowerment. You know, for those people who are living in vulnerable communities, and the situation is not good. Sometime, I think early or late last year, you know, my organization had a program in Turkana. And if you look and you talk about gender equality and empowerment, you do not see what is being done. Those people are living in abject poverty. There's no balance. There's no even, can I say what? Basic distribution of resources. Water.
Dignity has been stripped.
It has.
That human dignity has been stripped.
That human dignity has been, and it should be a challenge to our leaders. It really should be a challenge, because, I mean, you talk about social media in Nairobi and you're trending and you're on Facebook. There, it is not. Unfortunately, it is not. So how will these people even get to understand what is happening around? That is the real world. The world is not in big cities like Nairobi, Kisumu, and Mombasa. Our world is out there. And, you know, we will be judged based on what is happening to those communities, to those societies. Those people need to be empowered.
How can the church then aid in holding our leaders to account? And church here is not, I'm talking of church corporate, and I'm talking church the individual, because sometimes we Christians expect that church is speaking when our leaders in church are speaking. But we forget that the church is you and I. We are the temple of Christ in us.
Exactly.
So very quickly, how can the church be part of this change that we want and hold the leaders to account as we finish?
I think the church plays a very key role in our society today. And many people look up to the voice of the church. And just as you're saying, the church is you and me. The church cannot be a church without you and I, because we are the ones who form that congregation. We are the ones who, you know, come together and support the church in activities. So the church needs to rally and speak out. And I saw yesterday, or this morning, my Archbishop, SEK, speaking out, you know, about these elections and what needs to be done. The church needs to take that forefront. And they need to play a neutral role, and they don't need to be seen to be partisan, because we really look out to what they say. And if they keep that objectivity, then they will encourage more and more Kenyans to reach out. They need to hold politicians into accountability. They should not be politicized into what is happening now, and they shouldn't take sides. They should be neutral and, you know, speak to Kenyans and play their active role, because, you know, just as Christ did it, the church can do it for us, because Christ is indeed the church.
And on that note, the church is partisan to Christian values, not to political sides. And thank you so much, Joy. It's been an engaging discussion.
Thank you.
We really appreciate you finding time to be with us today. And that has been The Leader. Indeed, let's do this next week as the countdown is on. 12 days away, in 1 week's time, it will be 5 days away. Interrogate the manifestos. Don't get swept with waves in the campaigns. And remember, on election day, it is a day, but there is life after the election, and we must hold our leaders to account. As you hold ourselves to account, do the right thing. Thank you for the privilege of your time. Till next week, God bless.